Learning to Live from the Axe by Eugenia Price. Narrated by Nan Mcnamara. Preface. Even in our technological era, there is no way to cope with the content of the book called The Acts of the Apostles if the reader rejects the fact that there is a living, energetically active Holy Spirit. The men and women written about in this lively New Testament book simply could not have acted as they did on their own. Something happened to them on the day of Pentecost that turned them and their world upside down by pragmatic standards. Grieving, nervous, discouraged men who had only days before been hiding in a locked room afraid for their lives, moved at once out into the streets of Jerusalem, full of courage, balance, spirit. Their sorrowing at an end, life suddenly worth living. Consider their grief by itself for a moment. The man whom they had loved and trusted enough to desert their families and their jobs to follow. The master in whom they believed as children believe in a good father. Their king, who was going to reestablish the throne of David and put them all in important positions in it, was gone, crucified like a criminal between two thieves. Their hopes for their own futures lay in the blood and the dust at the foot of that now empty cross. But more important than that, their dearest friend was dead. How, then, could some concentrated kind of psychological phenomenon on the day of the Jewish feast of Pentecost have caused those grieving, broken hearts to mend in a matter of minutes? If God had not kept his word given to them through Jesus to send a comforter, the Holy Spirit, how did they become the men and women whose grief ended suddenly and never returned? This is not the way of grief for human beings. Real grief seldom ends. The healthy mind, fixed on God, can learn to live with it, but not instantly. It often takes years. The men and women who entered the upper room to wait in one accord for the promised comforter were wearing the same clothes when they poured out into the streets on Pentecost. They looked the same physically, but they were not the same. They had heard no sermons on how to handle grief and fear. They had read no books. They had merely waited together until the one whom they loved and believed in and mourned came back to them. The dear, familiar voice was still. The loved, familiar figure no longer.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?